Alright, hello and welcome to MTA number 4. Still at the 8th of July 2018, but for the 9th of July. I know, it's crazy, but I'll pre-record, because I might not be here tomorrow, so I'll pre-record. Last time I said, pretty cool, it's about debuff slots. And then I talked about LFR. So today's topics, for real. Debuff slots 8 and 16, how that triggers people and why it's important. And loot systems. Yes, loot systems. Also, big trigger. But we're gonna jump right into it. So let the feedback flow in. Comment below this video your stories, questions, noob stories, people that triggered you, loot systems that triggered you, whatever happened, no problem. I'll pick it up, talk about it in the next one. That's how this works. And yeah, any questions, I'll answer anything. Don't be afraid to ask, right? Excuse me. Okay, then let's start with debuff slots 8 and 16. So maybe for the people that don't know, there is a certain amount of debuff slots on mobs in vanilla. That goes, I think, until patch 1.6. That is, or like ZG patch. Let me look this up real quick. There you got 8 debuff slots that you can use. Right, 8. That means you can't play an affliction log and dot everything up, because some of those dots you'll notice will get pushed off, and you're fucked basically. Let's see here, debuff slots 6 and debuff slots patch 1.7, and that should be patch 1.7 ZG. Yes. So with the patch that released Rise of the Blood God, that means ZG, the debuff limit got increased to 16 slots from 8. And what that means is basically you have strong buffs and weak buffs, right? And that's also the reason why until that patch, you don't really have a Shadow Priest in the raid. Because a Shadow Priest to deal damage, I mean, you theoretically could have one in the raid. But for him to deal damage, he needs to have Shadow Word Pain up and Mind Flay up. And Mind Flay basically is this, like the beam, the blue beam, is a really good example of shit not working like that, because it's a really weak debuff, like it's a soft debuff, and he will put it on, and like for example, a deep wound will push it off, and that means his cast will get interrupted because the slot isn't there anymore. And it also used to be back in the day that or until a certain patch, that there's certain AoE debuff slots too on the target. That means if there's 8 people spamming Rain of Fire, or 9 people spamming Rain of Fire, one person's Rain of Fire will not deal damage, basically. So that's really interesting. It's really important to know for a lot of people. That's also why you shouldn't fucking use Serpent Sting, right? Fucking get out. Because that actually can still push off a really geared Warlock's Corruption later when there's 16 debuff slots. But the point that I'm trying to get across is it's important to know that there's 8 and then all of a sudden 16, and then the 16 makes certain classes viable. Like Shadow Priest, because then you can have that one Shadow Priest in raid that uses Shadow Word Pain maybe, or at least Mind Flay to deal damage. Then you will have Fire Mages that can use Scourge, they can respec, that also goes together with AQ40. But that's all debuff slots that need to be or are taken. It makes other classes viable, basically. And you can have a lot more shit on it, like Nightfall, right? The Nightfall proc that increases spell damage taken on the target, and all that good stuff. And so it's really important to have these 16, because before that, it's, to be quite honest, it's pretty static, right? Every priest is holy. There's nothing really going on with Shadow Priest. There's nothing really going on. Like a red paladin can maybe keep the wisdom up. Okay. Then I don't know. I think the same goes for an enhancement shamans or something that put a debuff on that increases nature damage taken. You know, Thunder Fury. I don't think it's out before that. Not quite sure. It should be actually. And that is a debuff slot as well, like the Thunder Fury proc that reduces the attack speed of the boss. All that stuff. And if I just go here into our, I could just go here into our debuff slot list. Now that we have 16, we made a list what we need, because 16 is still, you need to think about, okay, which debuffs are we gonna put on the boss? And this sounds tryhard as shit, but yeah, it's not really. For example, Gift of Arthas. That's a potion that increases the damage, physical damage taken by the target if it hits you. There's like a chance, and he gets a debuff on it, and it increases the physical damage taken by 8. That's really good for all melees, but it's a debuff slot. Then we got Fairy Fire, right? Thunder Armor, Fairy Fire, that's the usual ones that take up the slot. Then the Curse of Elements, Curse of Recklessness, Curse of Shadow, that increases caster damage and melee damage massively and reduces armor. Then Shadow Weaving, which comes from the Shadow Priest again. It stacks up and increases shadow damage taken by 15%. And then all of a sudden Warlocks go really well together with Shadow Priest because they all profit from this. So you want this. But there's no spot for it before that limit. And now the question would be, there's more examples for this, like Winter's Chill, and then you have Fire Mages, and then that doesn't go well together anymore because they all take up debuff slots, improved Shadow Bolt. You know, if you have an Annihilator, it's a really cool axe. I'll talk about that next time. Nightfall procs, expose weakness from the Hunter. The Hunter set has a proc that puts a debuff on the target, which then exposes the weakness. I think that's the way it works. I'm not sure if it's actually a buff. Let's check here on the Hunter, or if it's a debuff on the target. To apply an expose weakness effect. Yeah, so it's on the target, and then you have 100 with a full tier 2 that gives ranged attack for the others. And it's a debuff too. And now my question would be, maybe this, and I've read a forum post about this too. Would it maybe make sense to get rid of this for vanilla and tune boss HP? Because of course now it would make a lot of classes more viable, and it would be a lot more fun to see more variety of stuff going on, especially in vanilla, because there's so much cool stuff that you can do. Fuck off. And but of course, it's not really Blizzard-like then, but then again, it was like a technical thing that they had back in the day, and it wasn't because they wanted to design it that way. It was because of technical issues, if they would have done it that way. And of course you could say, well then, if you have like 20, let's say you go to 20, like another 8 or so, like 24 debuff slots, right? That would be a lot of fun for a lot of people. But of course that means you can apply more shit, and then bosses go down much quicker, right? And so you'd have to probably tune the boss HP up a bit to compensate for that. And I don't know, let me know what you think about this. I think it's a really good idea, but then again, I'm also, sometimes I'd say like if it was a really, like if there's an exploit in vanilla that was just really limiting, and you'd have to, I don't know, stupid shit in vanilla that doesn't really make sense, then I would say, if it's a small tweak, change it. But of course, a lot of people are getting fucking triggered by this. But still, like I think if it's a technical issue or something, you should fix it. But again, there could be the problem is, of course, that you would have to tweak the boss HP a bit to compensate for that, so it's not too easy. And it's easy already for some people. And yeah, I get the point that, you know, it's kind of changing something, and I would also agree with that. I'm kind of, I have mixed feelings. I just wanted to put it out there. It's a pretty cool topic to think about. But yeah, just keep in mind there's 8 at the start, and then with ZG you get the 16 debuff slots, right? And yeah, then the game becomes fun, I guess. That was how it was for me, at least. Like, you wanted to always have these, yeah, well, I can bring this potion, right? And I can do this, and we can judge light on the target. Yeah, you can't, because there's only 8 debuff slots, which are completely, you know, limiting anything really, and making this game feel much more 2005 than you'd actually love it to be. That's just my 2 cents. Let's move on to the next topic, and that would be loot systems. Yeah, another topic that can trigger people pretty hard, but I think it's not as bad. So I'm just gonna already start moving towards Cenarian Hold, because we're doing AQ. Here, look at this. I'm a good raider. This is a good example of being a good raider. Good tip. Put your Hearthstone where the raid is, or where you guys are meeting for the raid. Okay, loot systems. So, okay, I was asked why, you know, of course I'm getting asked a lot why we are, or what system we are using. And we, here in this guild, are using a loot council, right? And that comes from back in the day when I first experienced that system. And that was back in the day when I raided Burning Crusade, and I saw that it was actually a really good system to you know, get loot to the people that deserve it most. But it also requires basically a lot of trust from the people that are raiding with you. And so what we do here, for example, and I just want to get it out there because it's a really cool system. Maybe it helps someone that's leading a guild or leading raids and doesn't know, well, people are asking me to go DKP. You base everything on the guild ranks, right? The guild ranks are your loot ranks, basically. And while there's, of course, like socials and everything, but that all makes sense because the way that we do it is we have like recruits, members, core raiders, and then sometimes it depends a bit on the server we're playing on. We have like above, like you could say like Superman rank or whatever. It's called Royal Guard, and like above the core raiders, like people that are always top in meters, completely prepared and completely, you know, helping everyone out and just really nice. And there's sometimes these people, but let's just keep it simple and say recruit, member, core raider. And what that does is so you make a list of items that you would want only the core raiders to have. You can't put everything on there because you want to give everyone the feeling that they, you know, are appreciated, and everyone needs to get some items in raiding. That's the point of raiding. You can't just lock everything away. But you make a list of items that goes to the core raiders first, and if they have it, of course everyone else can roll, or if someone says, "Ah, just let him roll," it's fine. And then, for example, like a Locker Mirror drops from Blackwing Lair, and that's a core raider item, obviously, because it's pretty rare and really good. You know, let the item, you know, the item drops, you post it in the raid chat, people say, okay, this is what I would replace, so they post the item they would replace below it, and then you can see, okay, this is the item they want, and then you can check for upgrades too, right? Like the loot council always has the last say, and they'd say, okay, this guy's like really good, and he's been really unlucky, and the other two, they got 2 items last raid, so this one just goes directly to that other guy that has a big upgrade from it. The other 2 got items last raid, and you can make a really cool call. That of course requires people and the council and the class officers to not be greedy assholes, and also have, you know, keep track a bit of who got what when. And it also requires, and this is really important, raiders to be able to be fine with other people getting some stuff, right? You should be happy for others getting stuff even though you're not getting it this time. It's gonna drop again, don't worry. And so, you know, you post the item you would replace, and then the loot council either makes a decision or you say, okay, this is a really good item, all of these core raiders have deserved it. So you just basically call all the core raiders, roll now, and then, you know, the luck decides. So in this system, there's everything. You reward the people that are always there, always performing, and aren't dicks, right? And that is basically for the really strong items. And members, just regular members, for us, in our definition, that means people that usually sometimes show up, right? Not every raid, but like usually like 2 or 1 out of 5 or 3 raids. And sometimes they say, well, I can't come this week, blah blah, and they're not as regular anymore as the core raiders that are here for almost every raid. And so they have access to all the, let's say, for example, like MC tier 1 loot, right? It makes them happy. It's an upgrade for them. They can get something, and sometimes they can get the night loot or the core raider loot once they already have it. So you give the good loot to the people that show all the time, are always in the raid. The items scale into the raid, and once they have it, which is going to be pretty quickly, the members can also get it, right? And they just have to wait a bit. And then you have the recruits, and usually we say if no one wants it, you know, a recruit can roll, but like and then the ranks always go on top of each other, right? The member goes in front of recruit, core raider in front of member for certain items, so they don't feel neglected. And then you got socials, and socials act like recruits. And the off specs are above, are actually above recruits and equal with social. So that's how we do it, right? And it's been working for, I can actually say, for years now. It's a really good system that makes everyone happy, kind of. And you know, it's a fun thing to do, right? It's a fun thing to play. I don't know, it's never, of course, every loot system has its flaws, right? And there's always drama. If you have someone that doesn't really want others to get something as well, then yeah, he's fucked though, right? And this really builds community as well, and classes within can talk about it. Hey, you get this item first, and I'll take this item first maybe, and then they can figure it out that way. So this is the loot council based on ranks, and sometimes we also let the luck decide, and this goes back to, we wanted to have a certain element of you know, magic from the old days back in it, where usually or a lot of times people would just say, hey, let the luck decide, right? And there's a little of a thrill to it, right, if you get the loot or not. So you have like 3 people that are equally good, all core raiders, and they all deserve that item. Let's say, good luck, let the rolls decide, right? So you don't, so everyone feels appreciated, and yeah, the luck decides. And so I wanted to have that element in there. There's also DKP systems, and it's pretty straightforward. You raid, you get points. You're late, you lose points. You wipe the raid, you lose points. Sometimes there's stuff like you prepare mats for the raid, you get extra points. You do something for the raid, you bring a repair bot or something. Sometimes you get extra points, and then items have certain prices in those points, in that currency. It's basically a currency called Dragon Kill points, and then you spend those points. Simple. What can happen though is that someone saves all his points for 4 months, right? And then he decides to, yeah, I don't know, like a red paladin is gonna decide to take your Drakefang talisman because he saved up on it, and then he's got the most points, and he's gonna take it from you, and you're gonna cry. And so there's, I think you can also control that on which items some people can bid, I guess, if you wanna make it a bit more detailed. That's a DKP system. It's pretty straightforward, but yeah. Some guilds I know here on the last private realms that we played on, they just use rolls sometimes. They said, well, everyone that is in the raid deserves to roll, and I would disagree on this, but you know, they were really like, you could say they said it by themselves, about themselves. They are a casual guild and like all about community, and they don't care about progress at all. And if something drops, you know, most people can roll, and that's how it's done, right? And then there are sometimes hardcore guilds that use a loot council where you don't post any item, something drops, and then it's just decided who gets it, right? Or like who wants this, like accent chat or need or greed or whatever, and then people just say, well, this guy gets it now. While I think that's a bit too shady, loot councils are always shady, but that is always a pretty good sign that someone is trying to, how to say, you know, keep complete control above anything that happens and wants to gear specific people. But again, let me put one thing out there, like loot council is pretty common, and sometimes, I mean, if you have a really, really good idea about someone's trying to fuck you over, okay, but talk about it first, and don't make it sound like people are doing that on purpose. Because sometimes there's something behind the loot council decisions, and like the loot council, they are talking in the background, and if they make a decision, sometimes you don't really want to, right? They have the last call, and they have a plan usually, and so sometimes it might seem shady, but sometimes it's also there's some thought behind that. So yeah, I think that wraps it up. Again, long video, shit. But yeah, so now this time the topics were right. Thank you very much for watching and listening. Maybe that helped someone out. Keep the comments, stories, and questions coming in the comment section. Leave a like, maybe a sub. Would be very much appreciated. And yeah, feed me questions and stories. That's how the series works, and I'll pick it up in the next video, and then you know, we go from there, and then it should be pretty cool. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.